The Bitcoin price is still within this 12-week downtrend, 12 weeks to the downside. But if we hop into the 4-hour chart, we can see that things might be starting to change, at least for the short term, seeing 4 green 4-hour candles in a row after finding support just above the $20,000 price level, $71 away from 20K. Of course, the question that everybody's going to be asking right now is the bottom in for Bitcoin? Now that we're seeing this daily candle flip green, a lot of people are definitely going to be asking that question. We did have the Federal Reserve FOMC meeting. The Federal Reserve raised its interest rates by 0.75%, the most since 1994. And the question is, are they going to continue to raise rates this year? The answer is that, well, if the CPI index continues to see moves up, well, the Fed will have no choice but to most likely raise interest rates to combat inflation. But in today's video, I want to talk about where Bitcoin is right now on the macro trend, the fact that we are now hitting record lows for the weekly RSI, and how Bitcoin is following this post that I made from April of this year, when we were talking about how it was likely that Bitcoin was going to reach these lower levels on the RSI, and we have reached those levels just this week. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kevin Svenson, and today we're going to be talking about the price of Bitcoin. Definitely subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, smash the like button if you like this kind of content, and we're going to be talking about my analysis from 2 months ago discussing the weekly RSI for Bitcoin and, basically how we have nailed that target, guys. We have nailed that target on the weekly RSI, actually exceeded it. And once again, definitely hit that big red subscribe button and smash the like button. So with that being said, looking at the S&P 500 today, not all too much action on this news. A big wick to the upside, big wick to the downside, ending the day plus 1.46%, which is not very significant in the grand scheme of this downtrend. But the question is, are we going to be finding some kind of bottom now that the Fed has really just met the expectations of market participants, or are we going to be seeing any sort of unexpected move to the downside? I would say that it's likely that we would see, some sort of classic sideways ranging here for the stock market. Whether we go lower later, most likely it's going to be a lot of volatility coming up here in the coming months. But one of the things that I really wanted to discuss was the Bitcoin weekly RSI and also the monthly RSI, and how in this post from April, I was saying that, we should expect a cool down period before the next halving. And when I posted this in April, Bitcoin's price was sitting at 41,000. And we were talking about how in most cycles we're seeing, lower lows in bear markets, with a lot of sideways ranging, in most of these bear markets, and how Bitcoin is now sitting somewhere down here, and that it's more likely that we would end up seeing that sideways ranging alongside hitting a target of at least 30 on the weekly RSI. You can see down here, that was the target that we posted in April. And if we're going to the Bitcoin chart right now, and we look at the weekly, zooming in down here, Bitcoin has just touched a 27 on the weekly RSI. This is the lowest weekly RSI level ever seen for Bitcoin history in a bear market. Yesterday, the weekly RSI was at a 26. Now it's a little bit higher, but still we've reached record lows for the weekly RSI here for Bitcoin. And in this post from April, we were talking about those downward sloping channels that the weekly RSI usually prints in these bear markets. And we are now, very interestingly, coming up to the end of that, what would likely be the end of that. When the Bitcoin RSI gets down to these low levels, it's more than likely that we're at least close to a bottom. I'm not saying that the bottom is in, I'm saying that we're at least close to a bottom, right? And why would I say that, in the bottom may not be in, but we're close? Well, my brain kind of just looks at the Bitcoin chart here, and we see that we're sitting just above 20. Right, we didn't dip below 20. Ethereum touched prices just above 1,000 yesterday. We didn't go below 1,000. I think it would be likely that we would maybe test just slightly lower into that range for maximum pain and maximum fear. Sub $1,000 ETH, sub 20K, something like that. I think is probably likely. Doesn't have to happen, but what would that look like for Bitcoin on the weekly chart? Well, what we would probably see is a short-term bounce, right? Maybe some sideways ranging, And on that short-term bounce, you could see the weekly RSI maybe come up to this resistance. And then if Bitcoin does test a little bit lower, right, from here, let's say we do go below 20,000, what's likely at that point with that lower low is basically the weekly RSI would end up printing some kind of bullish divergence, a higher low before breaking out, while Bitcoin forms a lower low and then puts in the true bottom. Lower lows on price, higher levels of relative strength, and that would be giving us bullish divergence. A pattern like that would seem more likely to me than just testing the downside one time and that's it. So I think that Bitcoin could range into the sub 20K levels for a very brief period to put the market into maximum fear, to get the weak hands fully shaken out, because once we get below that 20K level, there's going to be a lot of fear. So I would not be surprised to see a pattern like this come into the market, right? Just a little bit of divergence to really set in that low before the recovery takes place. Usually Bitcoin is going sideways for tremendous periods of time. So expecting an instant recovery, I believe, is, it's just unlikely, right? Now, remember, guys, we do have this downward sloping resistance line here. So even if we do get that with a nice bottom signal, even the weekly volume here is way above average, and it's looking like this weekly may end with levels that are on par with previous levels, which again would mean that we're close to a bottom, but a slight wick below 20 to get the weak hands out, maybe touching 18K, 17K before the recovery would not surprise me at all. So yeah, that's something I'm keeping my mind open for right now. But ultimately, this recovery is going to take a long time, right? We have a downtrend. The trend is your friend until the end of the trend. And Bitcoin is currently in a downtrend. So getting above this major downward sloping resistance is the next hurdle for this market. And that could take until the end of the year before we really get a confirmed breakout. So expect a lot of volatility, a lot of sideways, possibly slightly lower lows, and then, sideways ranging into this downward sloping resistance. And once we break out, whenever that may be, that's the confirmation that we're out of the downtrend. And then at that point, to me at least, it would mean that we are confirmed for more sideways action. Instead of just being down, once we pop this resistance, it means, okay, sideways action is likely, coming before the recovery, maybe getting closer to 2024. Those are the expectations that I have right now. I think they're realistic expectations. And also, not to mention the Bitcoin monthly RSI sitting at the lowest levels ever, now at a 42.46, or I should just say a 42.5 reading on the monthly RSI. We've never seen levels this low. So yeah, I mean, these weekly monthly RSI levels tell me that, yeah, we're probably near the low. I mean, we're probably at least near the low. I'm not calling the bottom just yet, because again, I could see those types of lower low scenarios with bullish divergence on the weekly play out. That type of stuff wouldn't surprise me before we get the recovery. And that would end up sending Ethereum maybe to slightly below 1,000, which would be fantastic accumulation zones. But, again, just to reiterate, my sentiment right now is that we're near the low. My sentiment right now is that the current prices are good accumulation levels. It doesn't really matter if we go slightly lower later. That's just a little detail in the long term. Overall, great accumulation levels most likely before a longer term recovery takes place in this market. And I was talking to one of my friends yesterday, and he was saying that usually institutions don't want to just pump the price straight up to the moon because they want to get good areas of accumulation. So that slow accumulation phase is more likely than anything, right? Institutions don't want the price to rapidly recover. They want to have time. They want to be able to spend time accumulating, which is why most likely any kind of pump that may come up would likely would fail. There wouldn't be enough momentum, and we would probably end up going sideways until we get towards the next halving. Those are big swings, though. Of course, we could be seeing 70% up, 40% down. Those swings are all possible in a bear market, right? Be ready for that kind of volatility. Those relief bounces will definitely show up at some point, but generally sideways. And if this is true that the Fed is going to be continuing to raise interest rates throughout the year, Well, I think sideways action for the stock market is more likely than an instant recovery as well, and Bitcoin would then likely correlate sideways with the S&P on those kinds of moves, right? So the good news is that we do have a lot of time for accumulation here. And the good news is that we are at least near the bottom, at least near it, if not at it. And the last thing is keeping an eye on that weekly volume. You know, we're only halfway through the week right now, so this weekly volume may end on a really high note. And that would be another sign that we are at least close to the bottom. But that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, definitely subscribe and hit the like button. Join the Patreon if you want to support my work, get extra content, and join my VIP chat. And I'll see you guys in the next video.